Herb Brooks coached the 1980 Olympic ice hockey team against the Soviet Union, and in doing so became a significant leader in society. He played a dominant role in winning the game, but was even more influential to Americans as he gave courage to them during the Cold War, inspiring to them that we could beat the Russians. Herb Brooks' win brought a frustrated country back together. His team represented hope and a miracle during bad times in America. Shortly after his death, Herb's son, Dan, daughter Kelly, and cousin Bill Walter created his legacy, the Herb Brooks Foundation. The Herb Brooks Foundation is providing opportunities for kids to play the game of hockey. The foundation will assist in making hockey fun for the kids and letting them learn to love the game the way we did, says John McClellan, Executive Director of the Herb Brooks Foundation.
So before the 1980 Olympics, BU and Minnesota had one of the best rivalries in hockey. Yeah. So what was your impression of Coach Brooks before the team?
Well, I thought he was nuts. And throughout the year, I thought he was nuts. But a great coach, a great motivator, knew the game so well. You could see he just wore his heart on his sleeve. When he was a coach at the University of Minnesota, there was nothing bigger than Minnesota hockey to him. He grew up there. And then when he was the coach of the Olympic team, there was no greater honor for him than to represent his country and coach his country. So the guy had a great passion to coach and teach. And I always tell the story, you know, we had the bench clearing brawl with them in 1976 at the Final Four in Denver. And we always accused Minnesota of starting that fight. They always accused us.
During the 1980s, gasoline prices went from 35 cents to over $1 for the first time. There was a Cuban Missile Crisis. America launched the first space shuttle, Discovery, and to top it all off, we were nearing the end of the Cold War. The Cold War started in 1947, and during the Olympics, Americans were worried. Jimmy Carter was currently serving his last year as president. Pennsylvania had just had 2 nuclear reactors go off on 3 Mile Islands, causing a cleanup cost of $1 billion. The Soviets started to attack Afghanistan, forcing Americans to send troops. In the 1980s, after the U.S. beat the Soviets, people were persuaded to watch television more. The number of televisions nearly doubled over the course of the decade, from only 561 million in 1980 to 910 million in 1987 and around a billion in 1989. In 1980, President Jimmy Carter would boycott the Moscow Olympics if Soviet troops would not pull out of Afghanistan. It was a boycott to save the Olympics. So Lord Kellerman, Mike Morris of the International Olympic Committee, and the president of the International Olympic Committee organized a meeting with Jimmy Carter and Soviet General Secretary Leonid Brezhnev before the May 24th deadline. The boycott is an attempt to save the Games. Lord Kellerman insisted that the Games should continue as scheduled, and Carter reaffirmed the U.S. position to boycott unless the USSR withdrew from Afghanistan.
Herb Brooks was famous for ice hockey. He started off as a player at the University of Minnesota and won the World Championship of Ice Hockey playing for the United States in 1962, winning bronze. Herb Brooks made a big impact on the fans and all the teams he coached. They loved him because he was the only person brave enough to coach the U.S., because every other coach was afraid of the Soviets. All the teams that Brooks coached were very successful. Brooks coached 507 games in his career in the NHL and won 219 of them.
Herb Brooks influenced all the hockey leagues he coached, including NHL, NCAA, Swiss A, and IIHF. The most successful team he coached in the NHL was the New Jersey Devils with 40 wins and 37 losses. The most successful team he coached in the NCAA was the Minnesota Golden Gophers with 32 wins and 11 losses. He coached many other teams as well: New York Rangers, Minnesota North Stars, and Pittsburgh Penguins. He did very good with all of these teams and won at least one championship with all of them. Herb Brooks also has his own playing style, a hybrid between American and Canadian style and the faster European style, which emphasizes creativity and teamwork. a difficult thing to do with a tough rivalry between Minnesota and Boston University. But it worked. So Brooks took this playing style into the Olympics to eventually win against the Soviet Union and beat Sweden to get the gold. Herb Brooks is still affecting the people today. He was popular for coaching many teams and doing good with all of them. He never yelled at the opposing team and never really played dirty. Then in 2004, Disney released a movie called Miracle. And there was another movie about Herb Brooks called Miracle on Ice. Both are a story of how Brooks led the U.S. Olympic team to beat Russia and eventually win the gold. Brooks was still fascinated that they beat Russia. That game against Russia was called the Miracle Game. So after the game between the U.S. and USSR, Brooks' team went to the championship to win the gold. Upon the 25th anniversary of Miracle on Ice, the Olympic Ice Arena in Lake Placid, New York, where the United States won the gold medal, was renamed Herb Brooks Arena. Herb Brooks is one of the most famous hockey coaches in his time period, and even now, he coached many teams: New York Rangers, Minnesota North Stars, New Jersey Devils, and the Pittsburgh Penguins. He led the Minnesota Golden Gophers to 3 NCAA titles in 1974, 1976, and 1979. He won a gold medal in the 1980 Olympics in hockey. Herb Brooks was very famous for coaching lots of teams in all leagues: NHL, NCAA, IIHF, AHA, and Swiss A. He also coached 2 other Olympic teams: Team France in 1998, and the U.S. team again in 2002. After Herb Brooks' death, he was finally inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 2006. Herb Brooks was born in St. Paul, Minnesota. He attended Johnson High School, where his team won the 1955 state championship. Brooks continued his hockey career with the Minnesota Golden Gophers from 1955 to 1959. He was a member of the 1960 Olympic team, only to be cut the last week before the game started. 3 weeks later, Brooks sat at home with his dad and watched the team he almost made win the gold. Afterwards, Brooks went up to Coach Riley and said, "Well, you must have made the right decision. You won." This humbling moment served as motivation for an already self-driven person. From 1960 to 1970, Brooks set a record for playing on a total of 8 U.S. national Olympic teams, including the 1964 and 1968 Olympic squads. He led the Minnesota Golden Gophers to 3 NCAA titles in 1974, 1976, and 1979. From 1981 to 1985, he coached in the NHL for the New York Rangers, where he became the first American-born coach in New York Rangers history to win 100 games. He also coached the Minnesota North Stars from 1987 to 1988, New Jersey Devils from 1992 to 1993, and the Pittsburgh Penguins from 1999 to 2000. He was also a longtime scout for the Penguins in the 1990s and held the role of director-player personnel. He held that role until 2002, to the day of his death.